Yo, this is crazy. I'm looking at my folder like right now, and the last time I recorded a podcast episode was January 21st. At the time of recording, it is February 19th. It's almost been a full month since I've sat at this desk and did an episode for you guys. And I hate that this had to be the one that I came out of my little exile, my little hibernation for, but I guess that's just how the cards was dealt. You know what time it is? It's your boy Vinnie-Dangerous, 1430. Let's get it. Now, before I get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been reaching out. I posted last week that for health reasons, I wasn't going to be able to put out a new podcast episode last week of the time of recording. Last week that I promised. Between I've been having some weird health complications. I'm a guy that never really gets sick, so this is just really weird. Like 1 minute it was my ear that was being affected, probably from music mixing, doing it too loud in the headphones. Then I had some issues with my back that I'm still, um, going to the doctor for right now, and even now I'm congested a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I had like a little head cold like this past week, and that happened after I put out the post that I posted about not being able to put out the podcast last week. So it's been weird. And between that and between doing the Chapel Hill Black Film Festival, shout out to Argyle Rebel and Michael Washington for that opportunity. By the way, that was great. I got a little break in between not feeling well to fulfill that, like to not only perform at an event like that, on a platform like that, but to also have my music video that I link to the end of all my podcasts since I've been back. My Retribution music video, having that be showcased on the big screen in the theater, a video that we went into it with the intention to make it like a cinematic experience. To see, kind of something like that that goes from my head to being on the big screen in a theater. That was very like dope and surreal. So I'm really appreciative of that, and I'm definitely gonna be posting more content from that. I posted a little bit of stuff that my boy Camus got of me, but I got my homie Sleepy to do some professional shots that I'm definitely gonna be sharing. To make sure you follow me on my personal Instagram as well. I'll put that in the description, as well as like this video, share this video with a friend, and leave a comment, because I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of people that's not gonna agree with what I got to say, especially because the wound is real fresh. I've been seeing conversations about this go around for a long time, and I think I finally got to the point where I'm just so annoyed about it that I think I'm gonna have to do an episode about it. So this is why we're here today. So first and foremost, before we get into this episode, I just wanted to make this perfectly clear. I am not a Chris Brown apologist. I haven't really been that big of a Chris Brown fan. Every blue moon he'll drop something. Like as far as a whole album, I don't think I've really been into a whole Chris Brown album since that X album he put out in 2014. Uh, and every blue moon he'll put out something like a song or two in his very like massively over bloated albums. Every blue moon a song will catch my ear. Like I really liked maybe about 40% of the Indigo album when that dropped. Uh, songs like Under the Influence, just had like a little resurgence. I think like last year or a couple years ago on TikTok. So the guy has talent, but I haven't really been that big of a fan since like 2014, you know. And fun fact, actually, and it's kind of like poetic. So the whole podcast idea came from a suggestion like my boy Kenny Lampkin put underneath the post, like a long review that I felt very strongly about Chris Brown's Royalty album when that came out. Uh, I'm gonna get into the full details. Like I said, I really went off, and I don't know why I was so passionate about it in hindsight, but I was just really passionate about how much I hated that album. And you know, that became like the impetus of the podcast because my boy hit me up and said, yo, the way you articulate, your thoughts, uh, most of the time, but like in that post in particular, it really showed him like, yo, you should do a podcast. And it was something that, just kind of stuck with me for a minute. And then eventually I just said, yo, I'm gonna do a podcast. And then here we are. It started from that Facebook post, Dangerous Minds, which turned into 1430, which you're watching today. And I appreciate you being here. Um, so in a weird way, I guess I owe Chris Brown, even though uh, I was hating on, his album, but it did inspire the podcast. So I guess that's something that good that came out of that. Um, but really, I think now that I'm thinking about it, I really think this issue isn't really like the reason why I feel passionate about it enough to do a podcast. So I don't really even think it has anything to do with Chris Brown himself. Uh, and I've been kind of talking in circles. Let's like kind of catch people up to speed since, I've just been talking about an incident and haven't really given any details. So recently, Chloe Bailey announced that she has a debut album coming out, and the first single leading up to that album is going to be a collaboration with her and Chris Brown. Now, the only thing I had a problem with was the fact that in the snippet, it's this very lazily put together sample of the throwback track from Usher's Confessions album. Uh, I'm just sick of the lazy '90s slash early 2000s like sample tracks that are flipped into like lesser versions of the same song. And I'm thinking about that whole like back and forth that people were having about Usher versus Chris Brown in the verses. It's that's still fresh in my mind, and that was really annoying at the time. Uh, Interesting conversation. It just went from being very interesting to very annoying really quick. So it's just layers on layers of why I'm not really looking forward to the song. But of course, whenever a black woman, collaborates with Chris Brown, the conversation of the domestic violence, mainly towards Rihanna. I know that some people are saying, well, this is not technically his first, incident when it comes to that. Like, I don't count the Frank Ocean thing. Even though Frank Ocean is a gay man, he's still a grown man, and these two were beefing. He said something about Chris. Chris might have taken it too far, but you can't really tell people how to react. Um, and if somebody you say something about somebody, you don't know if they're gonna wish violence on you. Uh, but there have been other incidents like Karuchi, but mainly people are talking about the Rihanna incident back from 2009. And then in response to all the backlash, Chris Brown went on this long Instagram tirade. I think mainly had to do with Keely Williams from 3LW, her like response to it, which just reading it kind of comes off like more of a relevancy thing. I don't really even think she even cared that much. Um, like the whole swatting the air comment was like really, really corny. I don't know. Just that's me personally. And I don't really pay attention to the Chloe Bailey stuff, but I'm kind of aged out of her demographic at this point. So, I see it, respect to her and her sister for everything that they've been doing, but like, it's just not, I've kind of to that point where it's kind of contemporarily out of my stratosphere when it comes to like music and things like that. So I don't really pay that much attention to it, but like, chopping it up with my sister and chopping it up with a few friends of mine and my wife, and like people just kind of say that this is just using Chris Brown as a way to get at her. And I can see that. as after doing a little bit of research, doing a couple of Google searches and realizing that, oh, like Backlash kind of just been following this girl since she's went solo from her sister. So I get it. So I know this is just kind of more of the same, like using real life stuff, but it's just the fact that it keeps coming up. And for, first and foremost, I don't think that, because really the hate doesn't really feel like it goes to Chris Brown. The hate really goes to these women, and I think that's unfair. Like it was, it's first as if it's Chloe now, but it was Normani not too long before that. Tinashe got some shit for it. I even remember people saying her, even though I hate that song that her and Chris Brown did. I remember the backlash that kind of comes to that, because I don't really see a lot of that hate when it comes to men that collaborate with Chris Brown, like Drake, or I mean, hell, Young Thug did a whole album with him in like 2019, 2020, something like that. So obviously it's definitely a double standard when it comes to how people attack, you know, women that decide to collaborate with Chris Brown. And I guess that has more to do with the fact that his history of violence that you're upset about was towards a black woman. And therefore it just kind of like feels like we shouldn't be giving him no attention. But my problem with that is that it's very selective. It's very selective outrage when it comes to Chris Brown and this incident. Like one of the things that he said in his like long tirade on Instagram was the fact that it happened so long ago and he was so young at the time. He said 17. The math says that he was 20 around that time when everything happened. So, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I know he's trying to downplay it a little bit, trying to make it sound, even more innocent than what it was. But the fact is, he was an adult, but he was still mad young and mad stupid, mad like him and Rihanna both were really young and dumb at the time, and that's not an excuse. Trust me, I'm not making an excuse for it, but it's the fact that it's over a decade now, and the fact that not only was it something that happened so long ago, not only was it something that even Rihanna herself has come back together and collaborated with Chris since then, and they seem to have like kind of a mutual respect kind of thing going now. Like I think I remember reading that Chris even like bigged her up for her Super Bowl performance just a few weeks ago. And Rihanna was using one of his songs in one of her like Fenty videos. Uh, like she posted online somewhere. So there seems to be some kind of mutual respect. I may not deal with you like that because both of them have moved on, but it seems that there's kind of like this mutual like respect thing there. But not only that, but it's like the hate that he gets, because some people are kind of comparing it to the whole Tory Lanez thing, and I think the difference is at the time, not only was you know the hate, it was more so people coming at Meg for outing him as the person that shot her, and people instantly dismissing her claims and bullying her online and like giving her so much grief for just pointing the finger at the guy that was eventually found guilty for the issue. And the fact that people kept collaborating with him, kept supporting him, kept listening to his music, I think it's because it was still an ongoing thing. And I think if the hate towards Megan wasn't so vicious from a lot of people that, let's be honest, I don't even really think were fans of Tory Lanez. I think they were more so just wanted to use this as an opportunity to get at Meg's neck. I mean, if before that it was the whole WAP controversy, and it's just been controversial things like associated with her, and she's just out here making music like everybody else. Uh, but I think the biggest difference is the fact that at that time Tory hadn't been convicted yet. Chris Brown did get convicted, did face legal troubles for all the things that people are constantly bringing up. Like, I think, and it wasn't necessarily a Me Too thing, but it felt like a Me Too thing. Like, I thought the whole purpose of movements like Me Too, Time's Up, speaking out, like I thought the whole purpose was to shine a light on people who were using their power and influence to abuse people, abuse women and other vulnerable people like that are just coming into the industry, or at a point where they feel like this is a make or break thing in their career, and then taking advantage of that opportunity. I thought that was the point, was to shine a light on those people that have avoided those consequences for those type of things. But when I look at somebody like Chris was immediately ostracized. All of his sponsorships were taken. At one point, it felt like, and I know it sounds crazy now because it's been, I mean, it's 2023, and I'm thinking about, before 2009. But at one point, Chris was gonna be like that new Black American darling. He had a somewhat squeaky clean image. Like at that time, he was like, an adult, so he was making a little bit more raunchier songs, but it still kind of had a playful, more innocent nature than, let's say, the stuff he does now, where it's just blatant, as blatant as nasty as it can be. But back then, I felt like that was deliberately, like I could give you a little bit, kind of like in a B2K, um, boy band ish kind of way, where it's kind of implied, it's there, but it's not as direct, it's not as raunchy, where it could probably still fly under the radar at some like teen parties or something like that. And I think that was deliberate. I think he was trying to capture a certain image where he could have a spearmint endorsementship, and he could be like that nice smiley faced celebrity that can give you a twinge of family friendly, and be that like new dancing singing Michael Jackson ish kind of vibe. Not comparing him to Michael Jackson, I wouldn't dare compare anybody to Michael Jackson, but kind of in that same vein and that same ballpark as far as like persona, before the controversy surrounding MJ. And that's what, and it was kind of like, that's kind of like the conversation that was around, that Finding Neverland, 'cause speaking of Michael Jackson, like that Finding Neverland documentary, when people were upset because, Survivor R. Kelly came out maybe earlier that same year, and he was a guy that was avoiding prosecution, and was still out here committing crimes, where Michael Jackson had been dead, and every time they took him to court, he won. Now, you could say that Kelly won his, but that was more so circumstantial than anything else. Uh, so people felt some type of way about Oprah and these people coming together to support and create this documentary about somebody that had passed on and that had went to trial and was found innocent. And there's some other problems with that. I'm not gonna go into that again because I did an episode about that on the last version of the podcast. But you know, I don't know. It kind of makes me think about, in a lesser, to use a more like common man example. It kind of reminds me of when, you know, someone in the, 'cause we always talk about how unfair the justice system can be, especially to minorities like Black and Latino people. So you have someone who did a crime, but they did it really young, maybe 18, 19 years old, and they were found guilty. They have a felony, and now, after, and I'm talking about non-violent offenses kind of thing, but the felony is still a felony. So they go in, they do their time, they come out, and now they're trying to be a better person, be, a more contributing member of society, if you will. And but at every turn, they turn away from jobs and opportunities to walk the straight and narrow and not end up back in jail because of that felony attached to their name. So no matter if it has been 20, 30, 40 years, like decades upon decades have passed, they're still being identified by this thing that they did when they were so young and so dumb. And in a society where, you know, people are hoping to be forgiven for things that they've done, the fact that you will always be a pariah, like like I said, I'm not an apologist for Chris Brown at the slightest. Like, I mean, just a couple weeks ago, he showed his ass like he's been prone to do when he is upset about something, about the whole Robert Glasper thing. So it's not like this guy has been like this well-adjusted dude since that incident happened and since he was punished for it. But I think, especially in an industry where you can have all of the people that Chris Brown put on blast, actors like Sean Penn, Nicolas Cage, John Travolta, Ben Affleck, Emma Roberts, like people that have been accused. There's plenty of evidence out there, and there's even people that have been arrested, been on trial for their things, and it just seems to kind of blow over. Like the fact that somebody as heinous as a Mel Gibson, who has been, you know, been known to be very racist and xenophobic, and has said and done some like heinous things to his family, has has had like these crazy outbursts and violent outbursts, could still have a comeback. Like, one part of Chris Brown's rant was showcasing all of these white men who, like the ones I mentioned, that have been arrested for the same thing, maybe sometimes multiple times, and they all get to come back. I remember Mickey Rourke, uh, his whole big comeback with the wrestler movie that everybody was hyping up and praising, like he's been such a changed man. Uh, he has been convicted of domestic violence and other like violent crimes and things like that, and it just get kind of swept away. Matter of fact, in the description of this video, I'm going to put a link that I found kind of similar to the article that Chris Brown was pulling from. And I'm gonna put that in the description of this video. And as a little experiment, I want everybody to find just a few names and see if they're still alive. See if they have a new movie coming out soon, or if there's something in the works, or there's something in production right now. Matter of fact, in May of 2022, uh, I remember hearing about this at the time, and I thought it was kind of crazy. But Kevin Spacey, who has been accused by multiple people, and Kevin Spacey is a great actor. Movies like the Usual Suspects or Seven, and before all these allegations came out, he was part of the House of Cards series. That was fantastic. American Beauty is also a great movie that he's in. Uh, the guy is like Hollywood royalty at this point when it comes to playing certain characters and giving a certain level of performance. There were like buzz about his comeback movie at the Cannes Film Festival back in May of last year, and I just it kind of goes to show. Like, I remember at the time when the Me Too movement was happening in real time, outside of somebody as like heinous as a Bill Cosby or a Harvey Weinstein, like, unless unless you're black or unless you're some type of minority, I'm pretty sure a lot of these guys are gonna come back at some point. They're just gonna lay low for a little bit unless they get convicted, and even then, I think they're either gonna get a slap on the wrist or just maybe do a couple years of community service at least. Then they're gonna come back and they're gonna have these big like comeback stories about how they were able to get you know win people back over after everything that has happened. And you see it a lot. Like, you see it with people like Robert Downey Jr. and Mickey Rourke and Mel Gibson at one point. And I just find it interesting that, using that felony example that I used, that the disparity about how these things are treated when it comes to certain people in Hollywood and others is, I guess you could say, interesting at the very least. And by no means, I'm not apologizing for him being Chris Brown or any of the guys that I mentioned that were thrown under the bus during those kind of movements. But I just want, like in most of these conversations, I want you to be consistent. And I want you to be consistent about where this energy is coming from and who you are projecting it on. These women like Chloe, like Normani, like any of the other women that have collaborated with Chris Brown that have gotten so much backlash, I don't feel like these people should be getting the brunt of the abuse for something when he's the guy that you're angry toward. And I also don't like the idea of somebody being punished for something that happened so long ago, and also that they were held accountable for in the first place. You don't have to like Chris Brown. Like I said, I haven't really been a big fan. Every blue moon, I'll hear something that catches my ear and it sounds good. But I'm not running to the next Chris Brown release. I definitely think that Robert Glasper deserved that Grammy way over Chris Brown's like 3 hour, 105 song album of tracks that all sound the same. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like this guy has been quiet and has been minding his own business since that incident with Rihanna happened. But what I am gonna say is, I just want you to just think about it. If you were in that same position, you did something, you made a mistake, and you were found out, you were held accountable for it, and you did your time, and you took the punishment that was given to you, would you want it always brought back up when you're just simply trying to move on and continue to do the work that pays the bills, that makes a living? And especially if everybody involved has moved on, but it's just the people online that decide they want to just continue to point the finger and continue to remind you of the thing you did when you were a child, a young adult. He wasn't a child, but he was a young man. And young people do stupid shit sometimes. There's no excuse for it. I'm just saying, when it's time to move on, just move on. Like, I think the best policy would just be to not listen. If this song came out and everybody that was just as upset about it decided to just not listen to the song, if you're really that mad at both people for coming together and doing this track, just don't listen to it. I learned a long time ago, and I'm definitely going to do an episode about this, but the hate just kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't want this to be successful, whether you think the music is bad or whatever the medium is. uh, you think that it's going to be so bad, so terrible, that people should know about it. It's just free advertisement at the end of the day. So some of y'all may have inadvertently gave Chloe her biggest hit yet by having so much to say about her collaborating with Chris. But I think it's just time for everybody to move on. And more importantly, I think it's just every time for everybody to just be a little bit more consistent. But that's my time. There's probably some stuff that I left out. But like I said, I'm not feeling 100%. But thought I'd give y'all a new episode since this was on my mind. I powered through it. Now I'm about to go take a nap. But until next time, it's your boy Vinnie-Dangerous, 1430. Much love.